The Brown Park Podcast is brought to you by Grow Clinics. They're Australia's leading hair transplant clinics, and you can go to growclinics.com.au. Today on the show, we have a guest who is quite extraordinary.
He was a pro wakeboarder, living his dream in the US, had an accident, and became a quadriplegic.
And is now telling his story about how life goes on. He's remarkable, and his name is Brad Smeele, and he joins us on the show today.
The Brown Park Podcast.
Question.
Right, go.
And this has got nothing to do with our guest today. And it's just something that I've been going through in the last week. Have you ever had chicken pox?
Never. I was always jealous. Can I just say, I was always jealous because when you had chicken pox as a kid, you got 2 weeks off school. And I never got to have that 2 weeks. I was always jealous.
Well, I've just come off a week of the shingles.
What are shingles? I mean, I've heard of people with them, but I've never really known what it is.
Shingles are things that are on the roof of your head. No, and look, I've done a lot of reading on shingles over the last week. It is chickenpox in adults. So what happens is when you have chickenpox as a kid, it lies dormant in your system. The virus never goes away.
Right.
And so, I'm not an expert, but this is just what I've been reading and what I've been told by my doctor.
Hey, Dr. Google never lies. Thank you very much.
It sits in your nerve endings, and then if you have a low immune system because maybe you've had a really bad cold, which is something I've also had recently, it can spring up and take over one half of your nerve endings. So it only takes over one side of your body, doesn't take over the other.
So what is it exactly? So it's like a rash.
Well, I went to the doctor and I said, I feel like I've got a sinus infection. It was just like a little bit of a tingly sensation on my face. And he noticed a spot on my face and he said, do you normally get a spot? Do you normally get spots? And I went, no. And he goes, I'm going to say you've got shingles. He said, because everything you're describing is over one side of your face. Yeah. And so we got onto it early, and there's an antiviral that you can take that will reduce it from going any further, which I was so lucky because the pain is incredible. I've experienced nothing like this before.
I'll be buggered. So it takes over one half of your body?
Yeah, so over the right hand, and it can take over different parts of your body. Mine happened to teabag my face, and it took over the right-hand side, and I've had like lesions, which are beautiful, a rash, in my ears. It also gives you a lovely sharp stabbing pain every now and then, like somebody's jamming a pencil into your brain, and also all through my mouth, all up the one side of my mouth. So I haven't been able to eat. I haven't been able to really speak. I haven't been able to swallow.
Well, I mean, I think the question that everybody wants to know,
yes,
did it affect your right testicle? Did you get a rash on your balls?
No, because it only impacts one part of your body.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So it all happened around my face, and there would be nobody listening to this now wanting to know whether I had it on my balls.
Everybody wanted to know that.
Brad Smeele, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, mate.
Thanks for having me, guys.
From the land of the long white cloud this morning.
Yeah, more than just one long white cloud today, actually. It's pretty shocking weather, but it's great to join you guys.
Thank you very much. And we were just before we got on, we heard your dog. You've got a dog, Jet.
Yep. He's a handful, but he's awesome. We've had him 6 months now, and just doing all the training and everything, and trying to get him sort of trained up to be somewhat of a, assistance dog, and super clever, but he's at the age where he's just a total rascal as well, so good fun.
It is a ball of energy.
They're like kids. They go through that rascal stage.
Yeah, thankfully it's a shorter period from what I understand, but yeah, we'll get there.
And you can train them, and you can also leave them in the laundry and go out for a while, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You can't do that with kids.
Hey, my parents did that to me. I don't know what the problem is here. I thought it was normal.
Now, let's go on your journey, because you were a professional wakeboarder, and then there was a specific day that entirely changed your life. Let's go back before the day that changed your life.
Yep.
How does one become a wakeboarder for a start?
I got introduced to wakeboarding just on a family holiday. Like, we used to go water skiing, things like that. We had a little outboard boat that would just go skiing and stuff on, and skiing and all that sort of stuff, kneeboarding. And my mum was actually one of New Zealand's top water skiers when she was in her sort of early 20s, and held the New Zealand jump record for 10 years. I think she was the first woman to jump over 100 feet. And then, and so we got into it as a family and tried single skiing and all that sort of stuff. And I just found, I'd go kneeboarding and I'd be just wanting to stand up on the thing. And then finally, came across wakeboarding and gave it a go, and I never water skied again. After that, I was hooked, and then, just got into like a local scene, local water ski club that wakeboard nights. Would go along to that and just started getting better and better, and won my second nationals in juniors. And then after that, I think I was only 14 and stepped up into the open division and started making podiums there. And my last year of high school, or second last year of high school, I finished up that year, and I just decided not to go back. By that point, I'd made some friends in wakeboarding. They were all a bit older than me, and they'd kind of introduced me to the fact that you could travel with it. There's opportunities to go to the States or the UK and go and work at wakeboard clubs during our off season. And so I actually went and did a certificate in sport and recreation at university, and that was more just to keep my parents happy. I dropped out of school. I didn't want to completely upset them.
Got to give them something back, right?
Funny thing is, it was only 3 weeks before my first semester exams that I got offered a job over at a wakeboard camp in the US in Orlando, and kind of had to weigh up, get a somewhat of a bullshit paper that says I can kind of sort of maybe semi-coach any sport, or get into, could lead to, it could be physiotherapy, it could be sports psychology or whatever. But it was just a very basic sort of base paper. It was that, or go and learn to coach wakeboarding from the best coaches in the world and just soak up all the knowledge and everything. And it was a no-brainer for me. So packed my bags and
for sure.
Took off to the States and did a season over there and won Junior Worlds. And then that's when I was sort of like, there's something to this, I guess. And what followed on from that was 10 back-to-back summers. So loads of ups and downs and injuries and good times and, wins and losses along the way. But, man, it was a pretty epic lifestyle to live.
So were you sponsored at any point in time? Were you getting paid to wakeboard and do what you need to do?
Yes and no. So I was sponsored, but not really getting paid. You get free sunglasses and free wakeboards and stuff like that. So it definitely helped in terms of cutting out a lot of the costs. But traveling, training costs, like the gas to go on the boat, all of that stuff, I had to pay for. It was just something that was the biggest struggle for me, was finding financial sponsorship. There was a little bit of money that I was getting paid by Mountain Dew. I got sponsored by them, but it was barely scratching the surface of what the actual costs were.
Is the goal when you're in that kind of profession to then try and become like a Red Bull athlete? Because they tend to make money, right?
Pretty much. And I don't know how much money that Red Bull actually pay their athletes, but it's more the opportunities that come from being a Red Bull athlete, like the money that they will put into backing a project that you want to do, these insane Red Bull projects that you see happening. And that was definitely the goal. I approached Red Bull several times, and it's even in my book. I talk about approaching Red Bull and going and sitting down with them and putting together this proposal and everything. But there was, I don't know what it was here in New Zealand, there seemed to be something that had kind of put Red Bull off wakeboarding. And they were kind of focusing more on wake skating, which is somewhat of a non-sport, really. It's kind of disappeared a lot. I mean, it's still, people do it, but there's not a lot of competitive.
Until this moment, I'd never actually heard of wake skating. What is wake skating?
It's shit.
It's wakeboarding without the boots attached to the board. So you wear shoes, like skate shoes. You got grip tape on the top of the board, and you can do skateboarding tricks, summits and kickflips and things like that.
Yeah.
So it is
essentially just picture a skateboard deck with a skateboard deck
on water.
It's essentially what it is.
Yeah, it's bigger and squarer, but skateboard deck. And so it's a sport that's been around, and there's still people that do it, but it's not a huge sport. But the Red Bull New Zealand were putting a lot of money into these projects for wake skating, and possibly because the guys that were running the show were into wake skating. It was just their thing. So it was a little bit of a frustrating thing for me, because I was the best in the country at that point, between myself and Jeff Weatherall, we were kind of the two guys that were up there. And neither of us could get on board with Red Bull no matter how hard we tried. But it was frustrating for me. Like I had huge moments where I was one of the first in the world to land a 1080, so 3 full spins. It was like the holy grail trick of wakeboarding, and I thought that was going to get me paid and get me, set up. And unfortunately, I did that when the economy took a crash in 2008. So it was not great timing. There were other highs as well that I had, but even when I placed second at the World Champs in the Open Division in 2009, that was unfortunately followed with a failed drug test and had cannabis in my system, and they stripped me of my medal, and I had to go into a legal battle for that one. I lost about 30 grand in funding that I would have got from the New Zealand government.
For cannabis?
Not cannabis. Oh, my God.
And it was 3 weeks earlier that I smoked it. So I consciously attempted to, make sure I was on top of it, but it just stays in your system too long. And when you do a piss test, it's sort of like being pulled over by a cop and they're saying, "Oh, you were drunk 2 weeks ago, you can't be driving."
Man.
It's just the testing method is wrong. And there was a lot of other things as well, the way they went about that whole thing. There was some big holes in it, and legally they actually had no jurisdiction to take my medal, but I would have had to take it up with the International Sports Tribunal, and that would have cost a lot of money. So
would that rule still apply today?
So it's a substance that's banned in competition. So it's not a banned substance in terms of steroids or things like that. But it's on the same level as alcohol, where you can't be influenced by it on the day of competition. And that's where the testing method's wrong. They should do a mouth swab test. Yeah. Hey, you've been stoned in the last 24 hours. And look, honestly, if you smoked weed and you enter a wakeboard contest, you should get bumped up in place.
It's not going to help you. If Jesus, it's going to make you slower.
No, it really doesn't help.
It's not performance enhancing at all.
It really does not. One of the things as well about that event is I actually got swine flu on my way to that event in South Korea. And so I was battling the worst illness I'd ever been through. Barely was able to ride on the first day, didn't make it through, went through the last chance qualifier, feeling a little better each day, managed to get through and all the way through the finals and get second, and then and got drug tested. And so there were, as I'm saying, there were loads of ups and downs along the way, and moments where I felt like I really should have gotten that financial backing. But I suppose that's what led to this and me ending up in a wheelchair. Like, it was part of what was driving me, was that lack of support and lack of funding and backing. And I got to 27 years old and I'm like, I don't have many years left in this. So I need to do something now to get noticed and to really stamp my name so that sponsors notice me. And so that's why I went for the trick that I did, and I managed to land it. And then unfortunately I was trying it again and broke my neck.
This is the Brown Park Podcast. Now, a word from our sponsors.
Big thanks to Grow Clinics for continuing to support the Brown Park Podcast. And has your confidence dimmed alongside your thinning hair? Do you find yourself avoiding mirrors, hiding beneath hats, longing for the days your hair danced in the wind? Well, you're not alone. Hair loss can take a toll, but it doesn't have to steal your joy. With Grow Clinics, you can rewrite your story. They offer a path to rediscover your vibrant self, a journey towards a thicker, healthier head of hair, and their innovative techniques delivered by compassionate experts can transform not just your appearance, but your perspective. At Grow Clinics, they understand the emotional weight of hair loss. They believe in empowering you with personalised solutions, honest advice, and unwavering support. You're not just a patient, you're a partner in rediscovering your confidence strand by strand. So don't let hair loss dim your inner glow. Take the first step towards a fuller, happier you. Contact Grow Clinics today for a free consultation and learn how they can help you rewrite your narrative at growclinics.com.au.
This is the Brown Park Podcast with Christo and Dion. Now back to the show.
So tell us about it. What was the trick, and what went down that day?
So it was, the trick's called a Indie double tantrum to blind. So Indie grab, so it's your backhand between your front 2 feet. And a double tantrum is just a double straight back flip. And then to blind, you do a backside 180 rotation. So you land with the handle behind your back. So you kind of got your arm wrapped around your body and you land backwards. But it wasn't your usual type of wakeboarding where you're just behind the boat. This is when we're using cable systems. We're at Lake Roanoke, which is our own team training facility in Florida. And we had a mega ramp there. So it was sort of like your big freestyle motocross landing ramp, but it was floating on the water. And then the takeoff was out of an elevated pool that was on a peninsula. We dug this pool and which was sitting about maybe 2.5 meters above the lake level. And then we had a ramp coming out of that pond. So I was going pretty big, like from the peak of my jump down to the actual lake level would have been at least 3 stories high.
Wow.
Far out.
So I was doing this double backflip variation over about a 70-foot land gap. And then, you go and land down this big landing ramp, it was amazing. Like it was what I'd been really wanting and what I'd been looking for in terms of a new direction of the sport. Because I wasn't one of the top competitors behind the boat. I struggled to make finals on the Pro Tour, but I loved pushing the limits and landing new tricks and seeing how big I could go, and that's what had led to injuries in the past. So to have this big landing ramp to land down meant, go twice as big, but then, kind of have a softer landing. Unfortunately, if you bail out at the wrong time, then it doesn't quite work out that way. And so I'd landed the trick, the double tension to blind in Germany, which was where the only other mega ramp in the world was at the time, at an event called Rising High, a big Red Bull event that I got invited to. And then I landed that in practice, ended up getting 4th in the competition, but I knew I was going to win Trick of the Year with this trick. It was like, I'd been told it was the best trick that had ever been done on a wakeboard at that point. Yeah, and I was back at Lake Roanoke, so we're filming for a movie called Prime, and Sunday morning, 6th of July, 2014, was trying to land it again, and I just, after about half an hour of attempts, I was getting so close, and I just tried to I felt like I needed to have just a little bit more time to get over my toes and get centered over my board for the landing and not slip out as I'd land. And then so I was like, okay, I need to go a little bit better, stand up tall off the ramp and cut a bit harder. And I think the combination of that unfortunately meant I went bigger than what I was expecting, and then ended up bailing out halfway through. Knew I was going to I was about halfway through the first flip, and I didn't want to go halfway through the second flip and land on my head, so I still had line tension on the rope and tried tugging on the rope to redirect my momentum. And I actually turned the flip into a spin, and I was spun 270 degrees. I was 90 degrees short. Had I got that extra 90 degrees, I would have been okay. But unfortunately, instead of landing with the nose of the board facing down the ramp, I landed with my toes facing down the ramp and ended up tumbling forward. And tried to tuck and roll out of it, but then tucked my head under, and I just didn't get the push off my legs, or didn't have the time to really roll out of it. So I got my head under, and then the top to my shoulders basically impacted the ramp and forced my head into my chest and shattered my C4 vertebrae, and I was unconscious and left there floating in the lake, and my friends had to rush out to get me.
So you remember the whole accident through the whole thing? Like, you remember the trick?
I did. When I was in the ICU afterwards, and what I was picturing in my mind actually ended up being quite different to what I saw in the video, because we were filming for a movie, so I've got it all in extra high definition, super slow-mo, everything there to watch. And it took a while for me to be able to watch it. But yeah, it looked different to what I remembered. But I remember everything through the trick, and then from waking up in the lake and just the process, going through in my head what was going on and not being able to move, not being able to feel anything, and first responders arriving and all that stuff. It was just pretty chaotic and pretty surreal, really, when I think about it, how I felt at the time. Because it was a crash that I'd had maybe 5 years earlier where I'd gotten so whiplashed and then knocked unconscious, and I woke up and I couldn't move. And it only lasted like 20 or 30 seconds. I think I'd just like some sort of spinal shock from the whiplash, and it was just enough that my body was tingling, my head was ringing, I couldn't move, and then it all came back. So then I thought that this was another case of that, and unfortunately, nothing came back, and next thing I'm flown off to the hospital and the MRI, and the MRI technician's telling me to lay still. I was like, dude, really?
Really? Jesus.
Like, I'm going to be a pro at this. So, and then the crazy thing is there's actually about 5 days that I don't remember from then on. Like, I remember kind of being in the MRI and then laying in the hospital room with a couple of buddies there. Only really remember little bits of that. And then there's, like 5 days where apparently I was awake. Like, I'd had the surgery and my family had flown in and I was on a ventilator, had pneumonia, all sorts going on. But for whatever reason, I just cannot remember those 5 days.
Is that because you were high? Because you would have been loaded up on painkillers at the time.
Yeah, I was.
Was it marijuana? Was it marijuana?
I should have been on it. Performance enhancing. That would have helped me walk again. No, it could have been a combination of things, like potentially even the head impact, because I basically tucked my head under and the back of my head blew the helmet off my head. So it could have been that, could have been the surgery and the drugs, could have been just my body, I don't know, some sort of protection mechanism that, because I was awake and alert and I was in the room with the people that were there with me. I just don't remember it.
So you said you remembered waking up in the lake.
Yeah.
What was the first thought through your head when you're in the water after the accident?
So I remember just looking up at the blue sky, bit of splashing going on around me. So my friends were kind of pulling me back into the shoreline. And that first thought was like, I was like, oh shit, I can't move. And I felt the tingling in my body, sort of a ringing in my head. And it was, my first thought took me back to, I was in England when I had that spinal shock kind of whiplash moment. So it took me straight back to that. That was my first thought, was just be patient, it'll come back.
Yeah.
And then, once I got to the shore, I was sort of chatting with my friends that were there. They called in the helicopter, and I remember just being like, don't you call that fucking helicopter. That is going to be so expensive. Because I had no insurance at that point. This was the first year that I'd gotten a 5-year visa to actually live and stay there and work. Before that, it was just 6-month visas, like tourist visas. So I was in between my travel insurance and actually getting proper insurance over there.
Oh, no.
So I was worried about that, what the costs were going to be. The guy my buddy was on the phone. He was trying to get the first responders there, and I was the only one that remembered the address of where we were, and because I was living there on site. It was strange, because when my friends were pulling me into the shoreline, at first I was like, where's my board? Where's my wakeboard? Because I couldn't feel it on my feet. And then my buddy was like, no, it's on your feet, mate. It's all good. It's right here. And that was one of the first things I was like, oh, man, something's clearly wrong if I can't feel what's going on there. And then when I was at the shoreline, there was like, I don't know if it was aching or something, but I was like, oh, just get my board off my feet. And they're like, it's already off. Like, we've just taken it off. So it's that lack of awareness of what was going on around me and what I could feel and everything was what started to scare me quite a bit at that point.
Do you remember that conversation where the doctor has gone, okay, this is the situation, you're never going to walk again?
Yeah, they do. It was quite a cold conversation, and it wasn't much of a conversation, to be honest. And I think because I didn't remember those 5 days, I think I'd already had that conversation or I'd already had that talk.
No.
But then, because I didn't remember it, my family had called the doctor back in to have that conversation again. And I just remember him. He was such a dick too, to be honest. So this guy was like slick back hair, thought he was a hot shit doctor, kind of just, I don't know, just real cold attitude, and just said, look, all I really remember is that there's this 1 to 2% chance of ever moving your upper limbs again.
Really?
Forget walking.
Motherfucker.
Basically. That was...
Fuck.
That was pretty much it. I mean, it's not their job to give me hope or anything.
Yeah, but some sort of bedside manner would be nice, right?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't like the guy from the beginning. like that time, I was 5 weeks in the ICU, and there were loads of different doctors and nurses I came across, and some of them were amazing. Some of them I still talk to today. Some of them had the best intentions, but they just got on my nerves, and I didn't want anything to do with them.
Yeah.
And then some of them would just be like super genuine, would connect with them really well. I hallucinated pretty badly the night before when I started remembering things. So it was like the end of that 5-day period. I had really bad hallucinations that I'd been kidnapped and left for dead, and that I had been kidnapped by wake status to bring them back to the wake status.
Those motherfuckers. They would too.
And it was such a weird thing, and it was because this one nurse who I'm still friends with today, he actually looked like a wake skater that I knew, and so he was there that night, and my temperature went up to 108 degrees Fahrenheit, so it was about 42 degrees. So this is verging on brain damage material. If you stay in that sort of temperature too long, it can do some damage. And so they filled my bed with ice, like everything neck to toe was covered in ice to cool me down. And I had that crazy hallucination. And then next thing, wake up the next morning, didn't know where I was. Thought the nurse walking into my room was some girl that I'd gone home with the night before, and been so drunk that I didn't remember where I'd ended up. And then next thing I tried to sit up and say good morning, and I couldn't sit up and I couldn't speak. They had a ventilator in, so it stops you from speaking. So that's when it all kind of hit me.
I saw part of your story. You went into the spinal cord unit and you saw people getting there after you and leaving before you, and they were leaving with their arms moving. How did that play on your psyche? Did you think at that point that you were going to have the same result as them?
Oh, 100%. That was why I was there. That was my idea of why I was there in the spinal unit, was to get moving again. The spinal unit's idea was to get me in a wheelchair and get me off, out into the world. But yeah, it was strange because it'd be people with the same level injury as me. So mine's C4, so it's the fourth vertebrae down. It gives you a shoulder shrug, but no actual arm function. But like a C5 level injury, you should be able to get bicep function back so you can lift your arm up. C6 level gives you a bit more further down the arms, and then the further down you go, the more movement you get back. But there was a guy there who was C4 level like me, and then one night, just through getting real angry and just trying to move, he was just through pure frustration. Next thing, he almost punched himself in the face, and his arm suddenly moved. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Let me try that. And then
nothing.
Every day, every night, I tried using positive feelings. I tried using anger. I tried using everything. And it was really frustrating not making those gains. And, it was 3 years of that. So it wasn't just the spinal unit in the US. Man. It was once I'd gotten flown home, and there was the spinal unit back here, and then just constant rehab for 3 years, trying to get my arms moving. And I just felt like a failure every day. And it led to kind of the lowest point, which was at 3 years later when I had a bit of a breakdown. That was sort of a bit of a turning point where I kind of turned things positive again. There's a story that I tell. I do a lot of motivational speaking and things like that. And one of the stories I use, which kind of leans into comparison culture, is about that feeling of being in the spinal unit, seeing people moving their arms again, pushing themselves in a wheelchair, feeling so ungrateful and so jealous. And I wished I'd had the C5 or C6 level injury so I had more movement. And then I got back to the spinal unit in New Zealand, and I met another guy with a C2 level injury, and he was constantly on a ventilator and had a nurse by his side at all times and couldn't even move his neck. And I just felt so grateful for my level of injury. And I realized later on, I'm like, well, nothing was different for me, yet I let what other people have, I let that have an effect on the way I felt about myself and the value that I put on myself. And
well, comparison is a thief of joy. That's what they say, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. And that's where, we all do it with social media and just everyday life and comparing ourselves, but we're comparing ourselves against what we see of that other person and the life and what they're showing us that we have, especially with social media.
And most of it's fucking bullshit.
Oh, exactly. And so that's where, looking at someone on social media, we're only seeing what they want us to see. We're not seeing the struggle behind it. You know, I was very lucky to have a supportive community like the wakeboard community that raise money and rally behind me and really help me change my attitude, turn my mindset around. And the family that I had, there's a woman named Susie who's helped me out with the mental journey. I've had all these very amazing key people in my life and in my journey that a lot of these people with more movement and pushing themselves in a wheelchair and all these other people that I was envious of and I wanted to trade places with, they may not have had any of that. And a lot of them were all US based, so they don't have ACC like we have here in New Zealand, which covers us for accident compensation, pays for caregivers, pays for hospital visits, bought me a van, pays for wheelchairs. Like, they don't get all of that.
No, New Zealand has an amazing system. I mean, Australia's got an amazing system, but New Zealand has an amazing system.
It does, and you know, they've all got their downsides and, you know, struggles, and, you know, you got to fight for things that sometimes get turned down, and you know, you got to prove that this is why I need it. But we're very, very lucky to have that. Whereas, you know, a lot of the insurance companies that you'd have in the States would already be pulling back and not paying for caregivers, and it's dumped on the family and
trying to find a way out of it.
Yeah, and they may not have had someone like Susie to help guide them with the mental battle. So, hey, look, you know, today I might be in a much better situation than a lot of them are, but I let that feeling of jealousy and that comparison really affect my mindset and affect me emotionally. So it's just something I'm very aware of and something I use to help with others. And, you know, hopefully that message comes across really clearly around comparison culture. Like, we can draw inspiration and go for the best version of ourselves and whatever that might be for us. But comparing ourselves against the other side, you know, the grass is greener thing. Your grass is not going to get any greener regardless of how green everyone else's is. So you just got to work on our own grass and water it ourselves. And that's the only way to work on that and make our own grass greener is just to put the work in on ourselves.
This is the Brown Park Podcast with Christo and Dion.
All right, stop, collaborate and listen. We're going to talk about grow clinics for a second and not my awesome rapping skills. Are you ready to regain the confidence in your hair? At Grow Clinics, they specialise in natural hair restoration solutions tailored just for you. So whether you're dealing with thinning hair, a receding hairline or alopecia, their experienced team is here to help you achieve a fuller, thicker head of hair. Now, why choose Grow Clinics and not take off to one of those half-assed places in Turkey, I hear you ask? Because Grow Clinics have the proven results. The treatments are backed by years of experience and they have countless success stories from satisfied clients. And it's also about their personalised approach. They understand that each person's journey is a unique one. That's why they offer a personalised consultation and a treatment plan designed specifically just for you. Now hit up their experienced team at growclinics.com.au. That's growclinics.com.au for a free consultation and tell them Brown Park sent you.
This is the Brown Park Podcast with Christo and Dion. Now back to the show.
Because, I mean, I saw you took I don't know how long ago it was, but you took a 6-month break from social media because you were seeing all these guys wakeboarding and, you know, living the life that you once were. So that would have been a real fucking head fuck, wouldn't it?
It really was. And that was, you know, in those first couple of years, I stepped away a bit and just was really, really focusing on, sorry, 1 second.
Okay.
Really, just at that point, I needed to focus on myself, on this journey that I was on. I was stuck in the past, mentally. You know, I was going back through every epic time that I had on my wakeboard. You know, all the women that I dated, partying and sex, and just all these memories going through it, and it was making me miserable. Yeah. And I just really needed to learn to sit with the emotions that I was feeling and learn where they were coming from, what was causing it, what were the underlying beliefs behind them, and were those beliefs actually even valid? And, you know, I was lucky to have Susie help me, guide me through that, where she'd come and sit down once a week and we'd just talk about whatever would come up and help me sort of figure them out, help me figure out what was worth my energy and what wasn't. So yeah, I just had to kind of pull back from social media, And I think it's important to do that every now and again, or at least it's good to keep control of the importance we put on it, because, it can be an amazing tool. It can also be toxic as hell. So just depends on how you use it.
So what's your day-to-day life like now? Because, you seem to have found peace within your situation, and now you're using your life as a way to help others.
Yeah, and that's definitely a part of my life and my focus now that I've just found through, whether it's public speaking, whether it's through sharing things on social media, but more openly than a lot of other people do, and could be peer support work, things like that. But I always found after delivering a talk or something like that, I felt so invigorated afterwards, and loved being able to hear that there was a positive impact. Same with my book, and someone's read it and they sent me a message and they said, hey, this really impacted me in a positive way, blah, blah, blah. And it was just, where I realized that purpose, I think, really needs to be kind of driven from a place of service to others and giving back. I think it's, I don't know, just otherwise, if it's all self-centered, it just feels a bit more empty. So day to day now, I've, in the last year and a half, I've started working again. Well, I say again, as if I ever had a fucking job before.
Hey, you had a job, but it was pretty fun, right?
Yeah, I had a job that was fun and didn't pay much, but no, I recently started working as a quality assurance engineer for a tech company, a Web3 tech company that my brother was part of founding. And so we're sort of building tools for building out the metaverse. But I never thought I'd have a proper job, even before my injury. I never thought I'd be sitting behind a desk or anything like that. But a lot of what I've learned through this injury, I'm now unable to do things physically. I'm unable to be participating in a lot of things and being hands-on. So I'm an observer now. And so I've become very good at spotting things that aren't right, or, and just with caregivers and having to get the routine right with them, I have to be very aware of what's going on around me. And because I can't put things away myself, I have to know where things are being put. I have to kind of keep on top of things. So I just kind of fell into this job as QA engineer, but more as like an end user who doesn't have the tech knowledge behind it. Like I'm not testing the back end kind of coding stuff. I'm just testing it as an end user. And then so it's like 20 hours a week. And then just preparing for talks and things like that. Yeah, just trying to leave a positive impact where I can.
What advice would you give for somebody that is going through or is in the early stages of what you went through?
It's a real tough one because honestly, when I was in the early stages, I didn't want to hear anything from what someone in a wheelchair wanted to tell me. It was, I didn't want to identify as that. I didn't want to hear from someone else what sort of life I might have. So the main thing, very early on, it's just about having a good support network, getting people around you being okay, asking for help, like even venting anger and just letting yourself feel what you need to feel to start off with. I think in terms of not spinal cord injury specific, but just any adversity, major adversity that people might be going through. It could be a divorce, it could be, job related, it could be injury. So I think it's just really understanding what we have control of and what we don't. A lot of that comes back to attitude, effort, and action. I think those are the three things I really like to focus on because, it's just about, using our energy and our time in the best way possible. And, sometimes it happens and, it happens to everyone, and we've got to know how to process and grieve it, take the time to do that, but then really find a place of understanding of what is and what isn't. And, what you do have control of and what you don't, and then just working your way forward with help just to kind of process things. And I never thought that I would be happy or confident or anything like that in this situation, but it's strange. Like I'm more confident in who I am now than I ever was before. I had a lot of insecurities, even as a 6'2" model pro athlete, like abs and getting the ladies and whatever. Like I should have had every bit of confidence in the world. But yeah, there was things that I struggled with. And I think it was due to a lack of understanding of myself and a lack of that depth of, this injury meant I had to kind of peel the layers back and start from scratch and really figure out who Brad is, because I used to introduce myself and people were like, oh, like, who are you? I'm Brad, I'm a pro wakeboarder. It was always related to what I could do, not really who I am at my core. And that's a really hard question to answer, because it's like, well, I'm Brad. It's like, well, no, that's just a name. It's a challenge to find who you really are at your core when you've built your life and your identity around what you do. And when that's taken away.
What you're saying there is not focusing on what you lost, but focusing on, what you've got now and what you can have in the future.
Yeah, and that was the turning point. I mentioned earlier the breakdown after 3 years, and that was where I ended up going back to the spinal unit for a couple of weeks. I had some pain issues that we were trying to work through, but I was so mentally just drained and exhausted and sort of felt like I was drowning. And so that's where I kind of just went, okay, I'm going to take away any distractions and I'll do some reading. And this is where I sort of was starting to work through writing my book. This is where I first started. And yeah, I just kind of had to stop looking backwards and start looking forward. And that's where I was like, okay, well, what am I grateful for? What do I have? What can I do? And that's actually what led me into some of the really fun stuff I do now, like freediving.
Oh, nice.
No one would ever think someone who cannot swim and has no use of their body would, get into freediving. But, I've done some diving and sat 12 meters down and sat there for 3.5 minutes on my own.
Awesome.
Just sort of, I had safety scuba diver around, but yeah, just holding my breath and pushing myself again and finding progression. And again, that was like, when I was in that moment, I was like, okay, what are some things that I could do that would give me the same experience as anyone else? And the scuba diving and skydiving were two things I was like, that'd be pretty
awesome.
And then the scuba dive doctor said, absolutely not. You're not going scuba diving. And I've seen other people with my sort of injury go scuba diving, but for whatever reason, she was, not going to give me clearance. And then I was like, okay, I was actually pissed off. I was so annoyed because he's taken something away that I really wanted, but really that door was closing so that the another door could open, which was freediving. And, because the risk he was talking about was from breathing compressed air underwater.
Right.
And I'm like, well, if I hold my breath, then it eliminates that medical risk. And so then now, I've built my breath hold up to 5 minutes and 45 seconds.
Jesus.
Which actually I'm sort of working on building it back up, because it's been a while since I've hit that sort of a target. But yeah, it's just, you never know where we're being led, and just by being open to the possibilities and opportunities that come our way, like, we can get us some pretty cool things. And it may not be what you had in mind. It's actually more than likely won't be what you thought life had in store for you. I think plans very rarely work out the way that we think they will. But I think just being open to the process and just taking things as we go is really important.
Well, the book is called Owning It, and you certainly fucking do.
You are the man.
Brad Smeele, oh my God, this story is just inspirational. And man, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for going through it and then being so positive on the other side.
Oh, my pleasure. It's one of those things. You get a lot of people that are like, oh, I could never go through, I could never handle what you're going through. I'm like, as humans, I think we just don't understand how strong we really are until we need to be, until we're presented that challenge. And so as much as I would never wish for anyone to go through this, like it honestly is something that has really opened my mind and opened my eyes to kind of the strength that we do have. And that's why I really enjoyed writing a book and putting it out there for everyone to read, because I wanted people to learn what I've learned without going through what I've been through. And I think that was kind of the big driver. So yeah, something I'm really proud of. I never thought I'd write a book. Geez, if you told my English teacher back when I was at high school that I was going to be what is it? I was on the
published author.
Yeah, not even that, but I made it to like the
top 10 on Amazon or something.
Something like that.
Perfect. Love your work, mates. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on and letting me share my story a little bit.
You're an absolute fucking champion, and makes me grateful for everything that I have. So keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
The Brown Podcast.
Why are you happy?
Because I don't want